Okay, so apologies for not introducing myself before. I'm Sahar and I study history at LSE. I'm going into my final year. So now we're going to break down the personal statement and help you guys structure the personal statement. So in your first paragraph, regardless of whether you're doing a thematic or a non-thematic approach, you need to state why you are doing this degree. Your opening has to be, why have you chosen such a degree? And why have you chosen to study it? Because that will really demonstrate to the academics who's reading your personal statement your interest in that subject and makes it a genuine interest. So why you want to study this degree and you make it personal. If you're talking about something that's of personal interest to you, think about how did it make you feel, or think at the time that you're either participating in a certain event or when you were doing something. Did it lead to any further thought? What was that thought? And how does this link to the subject that you were doing? Did it really alter your understanding in any kind of way, or did it help the understanding of that subject that you are doing? The point of your intro, your opening paragraph, is that that's the first time that you will really be demonstrating to the academic that's reading your personal statement who you are as an individual and why you are interested in that degree. Your opening really makes a difference as to whether they captured onto reading the entirety of your personal statement, or if they think that it's just another standard personal statement that is like every other person. You really need to make it personal so that you stand out from the rest or from the crowd, because bear in mind there will be thousands of people applying for that university and also that degree course. So you do want to make yourself stand out. So Dana, next slide. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to read these two examples of why you. Read these examples and then I will be asking some questions as to what you have found in these examples. So the first example is an example of a thematic approach, and the second one is a non-thematic approach. Can anyone tell me, or can anyone pick out where the individual has answered what made you study this course?
Feel free to use the chat as well, guys. Just put it in the message.
And then I'll just read out the actual answer. Anyone wants me to repeat the question, it's what made you want to study this course in either of the examples? Okay, so in the first example, a few of you have got the answer correct. It's the last sentence. So it says, the person has introduced their desire for the subject after their theme, and they've said, through studying PPE, I hope to develop. It's actually the whole idea of the interest in popularism. In the second example, it's the section that says, it's the first sentence. It says, witnessing the repercussions of X, which took out for confidentiality purposes. So, so that is your examples there. My second question to you is, In the first example, can anyone tell me where the example of how did it make you feel or think is? Okay, 30 seconds maybe. Okay, so the answer to this one is, it's where it says populism made this person question whether it's ever justified to frustrate the will of the majority. So those are your answers. If you want, you can use these examples to see where the other questions have been answered. You can now move on to the next slide. Over to Fazana.
So become the academic is a concept we came up with, and what it is we expect students to place themselves in the shoes of an academic, be it a historian, a psychologist, a lawyer, etc. And they then engage with the academic material they've come across that's relevant to this degree. Now, the following are examples you can use when discussing this. So it can be an EPQ, a book and journal, podcasts, TED Talks. But the point is, you'll be going quite in depth with either of these. And this paragraph is very specific to diving into academic material as opposed to all other types of supercurriculars that you could be doing. So again, here are some prompt questions you can use when analyzing. Really strong personal statements often show how a student's ideas and understanding have developed over time. They hint at themes and patterns within the subject that the student has become aware of, and they've started to now explore. And they've made this connection with things they've done, such as EPQs, to demonstrate how their ideas are now evolving because of this specific, maybe literature that they've read. In effect, the point is, you're telling a story of academic development, and it began with this interest you had, and it's now culminated in a student applying for this course at university. Now, if we go through the questions, we start off with question number 1. Before choosing what to read, watch, listen, think. What aspects are of particular interest to you? This is the first stage you need to go through before choosing a specific piece of writing or lecture to listen to, because you need to choose something that you find interesting. For example, I chose to do medical law, some choose to do human rights, and if you're not interested in the above academic material, it will be difficult for you to answer the later questions that I've got. But what you want to do is choose something you care about, because this will shine through your analysis and your ability to now engage with the material. So now, after choosing this specific area of interest, the second question is, what did you do and why did you do it? Now, here is where you can introduce what exactly you, for example, read. Answering the why is so crucial, because this material should easily be relevant to your degree. Your why could, for example, be, after reading Mental Capacity, Law, Autonomy, and Best Interest by Professor C, I was fascinated by the relationship between medical law and ethical dilemmas, and that dilemma could easily be why somebody has a right to life but no right to die in this country. That is your what, and that is your why. What did you learn, and what are the key issues? Is a third question. This is your chance to highlight what the key arguments, issues, what the case is about, these types of things. So for example, I analysed Pretty and UK. So here I said the European court judged that the right to life could not be construed as the right to die. The applicant argued that Article 8 protected one's decisions over one's body, and the state's interference was not justified. So here I know what the key issues are, and I've now stated them. With question 4, what did the author think? This should be very succinct and very to the point. It should be an explanation of what the author's perspective of this issue is, so you can demonstrate that you know what you've read and you can now summarize it. So for example, the book that I read, Professor Coggan, his view was that a patient's endorsed values should hold precedent. So whether or not they have decision-making capacity to decide whether they want to live or die, it is wrong for judges to impose sanctity of life. And sanctity of life is obviously the idea that all life is sacred and nobody should be entitled to, for example, end their own life. So that is the author's view. Number 5 is, have other academics commented on this and what did they think? Now this is optional, but I would highly recommend doing this. And the reason why is because doing further research into your subject and highlighting other academic opinions is often what you'll be doing at university. And then it gives you a chance to weigh up different perspectives before coming to your conclusion. So for my one, I remember talking about Hart and Devlin. With number 6, taking into consideration all the perspectives put in front of you, the question is, what do you think? So you've now read this academic material, you've researched maybe this case study, you've thought, okay, what does the author think about this, of this book? What have other academics commented on this? And now, what do I think? You should be able to demonstrate your ability to critically think and to now evaluate the views put in front of you. You should be able to take a position and now confidently argue for what you think is the better side and support it with evidence. So you are more than welcome to take an opposition argument to, for example, the current state of the legal system, but you must support this with evidence. So there's 2 things I would say when you're doing this and you're stating your opinion, you must do is, first, proceed with caution. Do not overestimate yourself and take completely radical positions. It's okay to maybe have a position contrary to what the current state of maybe the world is. And when you include these bold statements, I would just say, don't just be like, the entire legal system is corrupt. You want to say, you can have the opinion, yeah, but have the opinion and come with evidence. You want to come, or you don't want to come off of like as if yourself, and come with evidence. Point 2, limit yourself to perhaps 4 academic materials at most and deal with these appropriately, rather than flooding the entire paragraph with every single opinion known to man. With number 7, the question is, has this changed how you understand your subject, and how? Now, this is where you can question the assumptions you used to hold about the subject and now demonstrate, and if you can demonstrate, a change in opinion after considering everything put before you. Now, an example is the court's ruling question. So this was mine to do with medical law. What the court is now doing questions, will they ever be able to now make a decision between when assisted suicide is and is not justified? Because the things I've now introduced shows that they don't have a clear stance. Evidence I've got right now has changed the way I understand law. And you can now apply this to whatever subject you have and show how you've changed your understanding of, for example, politics. The next slide is just 2 examples. You can think about this based on the questions in the previous slide, but the point is, can you sort of point out how this person has analyzed the material above and given their opinions? You can put your answers in the chat box if you want, but I'll just go through number 1. So the question was, before choosing what to read, what to listen, think. So I can see from this person that they have quoted Lord Bingham in his renowned work, The Rule of Law. So what aspects are of particular interest to this person is the rule of law, clearly, and that is an aspect of law being constitutional law or public law. First question answered. Second, what did you do? Why did you do it? We know they've read the rule of law. And why did they do it? Because we clearly see they have an interest in constitutional law, the idea of social equality, and how this impacts the law. Third, what did you learn? They've learned here Dicey's conception of the rule of law. And with number 4, taking into consideration all the perspectives put in front of them, what do they think? That's the last sentence of this, leading them to question the intricacies of putting law into practice and understanding how disputes are resolved in the law. With the second example, you can see that they've introduced 2 academics and they've sort of explained how each of them differ in opinion, or how each of them relate to one another, and how this now relates to economic growth and development, and how they've gone further and how it's changed their understanding of economics by now advocating for access to education. So you can see in both of these examples that they've got something that they've done, which could be completely different, but they've done something and they've gone into it further and demonstrated what they thought about it being the most important part of this paragraph. Moving on, we have becoming the enthusiast?
So becoming the enthusiast, this is going to be generally the third paragraph, third or fourth, depending on how you structure it, for your personal statement. And the purpose of this paragraph, very, very similar to become the academic, but just slightly nuanced in that in this paragraph, you generally talk about something that you've done, something that you found very interesting. For example, it could be a summer school. You know, some people might go to something called LSE Choice that was taking place. Or you might have done something very similar, like take part in a debate. Or you might have done something like watched a lecture online, or you've done some volunteering. But from that particular activity that you've done, you've taken it and you've related it back to your degree. And that's how you show you're enthusiastic about the degree itself. A very, very basic example that we can look at. Let's just say I decided I wanted to go and volunteer at a charity. And when I was at that charity, I was, giving food to the homeless. I was at a homeless shelter. How did that experience then make me want to study more about homelessness or something about development in the UK? Did I do some research about that? Did I take that further and, learn a bit more about it? And then what opinions did I formulate, or how do I then approach that concept? But through the thing that I've done, I've shown that I have a particular passion for the degree. Here are some examples that you might include. So higher education programs, summer schools and taster days, like we mentioned, relevant work experience. So if you're applying for something like law, you might have done a work experience at a law firm, but you relate that to the academic side of your degree. How is that relevant? What skills did you derive from it? If you go on to the next slide, Farzana. Perfect. So here are some of the questions that you can consider in approaching your personal statement for this particular paragraph. So what did you do initially, like we've mentioned? So for example, it could have been going to a seminar, it could have been helping a charity, whatever it is. How did that link to your current or future studies? So the thing that you've done, does it relate to your degree in any particular way? Were you helping out at an event which was to do with, I don't know, poverty? Or were you helping out at an event which was to do with, it could be a philosophy or something like that. But that passion that you did, or that passion that you had, you took it to then relate it further to your current studies. Why did you enjoy it, or what did you learn from it? What was interesting about it? Explain that a little bit. And did you face any challenges regarding that? Not challenges in terms of the thing that you've done, but in terms of the academic sort of process behind what you were actually learning about, or what you were having the conversation about in your personal statement. So for example, if you were learning about economics through your thing that you've done, how was that challenging your own personal views? How was that challenging how you approach this particular concept, or how you approached it previously in terms of a practical sense in your own life? And then what did you follow up to develop this idea or develop this thought? Now we'll look at a couple of examples of how people have done this in their personal statement. So if we just take 2 minutes, if you can read this quick paragraph, and then we'll talk about how this individual actually included it in his personal statement. Perfect. So if you have a look at this actual section or someone's paragraph regarding in their personal statement, they start off by mentioning that they took part in something called LSE Choice, and it impacted how they approach linguistics, economics, and business, and it increased their interdisciplinary thinking, which is thinking from different lenses, thinking from an economic lens or a political lens, and how he can combine that together. And then he explains that through this, I was able to understand different political systems and how political systems are approached. And he developed that further by doing a couple of readings. So he mentions Orwell and he mentions Huxley. And then he takes that further to understand, what are the moral justifications for the democratic system or the utilitarian rationale for authoritarianism. why do we approach these in a very particular way? So he utilizes his enthusiasm or his passion for the degree by taking part in something outside of the degree, so LSE choice program, and then he takes that further. If you go on to the next slide, please. Thank you, Farzana. If you guys take a quick second to read this paragraph, and then we'll talk about it as well. Feel free to message me if you have any thoughts regarding this paragraph as well. Perfect. So someone messaged and they've said, participating in the history paper trails, that's an example of how someone really talks about their, or this person really talks about their enthusiasm for the degree. And it shows that they're applying it beyond their just academic sort of life, and they're taking it to their own personal life as well. But from that, they talk about the way in which they're able to develop a particular understanding. So they mention how you can approach artifacts and you may not necessarily know about them, but you come to understand a particular event by analyzing that particular artifact or that particular item that you're looking at. Similarly, in the paragraph, they go on to talk about how utilizing that and also doing something such as Oxbridge tutorials in their sixth form has been able to enhance their critical thinking and take it further. So they're looking at the things that they're doing on a day-to-day basis that then link to their degree and shows to the admissions officer or shows to the person that's reading their personal statement that they're really passionate about the degree and they're really enthusiastic, particularly because they're doing things outside of their degree that relate to the degree itself. And that's the key point to take away here. And we can move on to the next slide. Thank you very much, Farzana.
Okay, so this should be your closing paragraph now, right at the end of your personal statement, and it's your extracurricular and your current studies. This paragraph is different from the previous two mentioned because they're probably less academic, and that's why we recommend that it should only be about a sentence or two, not too much. As opposed to what you actually did, the most important thing is what have you gained from it, notably any transferable skills that you've gained that are relevant to your degree. So there's no point in just mentioning that, you know, like Abdullah said before, I volunteered here, or, you know, I'm part of debate club, or I'm head girl, or whatever it is. The whole point is, okay, well, what did you learn from that? How is it relevant to your degree? Whilst the other two paragraphs were quite academic, again, like I said, this one has the potential and most likely will be what's not academic. So outside of your curriculum, outside of your degree of choice. In order to make sure it is relevant, make sure you focus more on the skills you've gained rather than just what you did. Also try and avoid listing, because this is quite likely that you can fall into that trap. So just try to avoid it as much as you can. And we've given you some pointers here on how you can make sure that you go about it the right way. So like I said before, what have you gained? Any transferable skills that you get, for example, teamwork, communication. If your degree is something that's quite heavy, so for example, like law is, you can talk about things like managing your time more effectively, things like that. How will it help you throughout your studies? Like Abdullah mentioned before, if something like volunteering would be extracurricular, has it helped develop certain ideologies or raise certain questions in your mind that will then help you with your degree and that you hope to learn? One thing here you can also mention is your career aspirations, but again, be very, very careful. If you're if the place you're applying to, for example, Oxford or Cambridge, most likely they're going to want you to be like leaning towards the academic side a lot more. Also, we don't recommend that you be too honest. So if you are thinking of doing politics or history and then converting it to GDL, don't tell them that. Just kind of mention that you want to try and keep it as relevant and focused to the degree as much as possible. Maybe just kind of say what you want to achieve out of your career, instead of rather taking them through your whole 5-year life plan. But again, this is a chance for you to show yourself and your personality a lot more. But again, make sure you always relate it back to your degree, and make sure it's relevant, and make sure that the university knows that by doing this, you've gained a skill, or you've gained a way of thinking that will help you and benefit you when it comes to studying your degree of choice. So the next slide is an example of that. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to just read it. And if you can tell me where that person has applied what they've done to their degree, you can just message it. Okay, so we've got a few people messaging back, and there is quite a lot in here as well. As you can see, in just by looking at it, compared to how much that's been written, it's a lot less compared to the previous paragraphs, which is what we recommend you to do anyway. The first thing they've done is linked their subject choice, so economics, to start a blog. But what has this shown them? What has this led them to develop? It's writing and independent learning and their skills. And then after they mentioned public speaking and even things like your religion or Arabic language, and how those things have helped them to develop an understanding of differences in culture, and that you hope that by studying that degree, those questions and those ideologies that you have, you'll be able to engage with them even deeper and even further once you study that degree choice. So again, in this paragraph, you can see that they've not really explained things in much detail, which is good. They've literally gone straight to the point with things. I did this and I learned this. I did this, I learned this. So with this paragraph, the last paragraph, it's very important that you don't waffle and that you get straight to the point with what you've gained out of what you've done. It's okay to mention more than one thing as long as they're all relevant, and try and keep it as concise as possible. Yeah. And next slide, Fazana.
Right, so these are just basic takeaway points and tips. With the first one, make it academic and subject focused. Now, we've explained that academic material and supercurricular activities are far more important than the extracurricular. So we do recommend that you do perhaps an 85-15 sort of split in your personal statement, 85 being the academics and extracurricular being the 15. For the second point, structure the statement around your interests, perhaps with individual paragraphs focusing on particular ideas you've come across or activities. Fewer examples that are well analyzed are better than a shopping list. It is far more important to think through and analyze your 4 to 5 activities than make a list that are put there without a purpose. And the reason why we say about 4 to 5 is because the second you start going to 6, 7, 8, 9, the importance of these, you sort of undermine them and they don't sound amazing, because now you've sort of listed everything that you've ever done in life and not actually spoken about them with due right and justice. The third point being avoid cliche phrases such as passion and from a young age. No matter how true that is, you could have wanted to become a lawyer since you were 2. They're just not taken very well. And you want to, again, be as original and genuine as you can. And you can see in the first paragraphs that we showed, some of these individuals had mentioned maybe a personal experience, something personal to their academic journey. These types of experiences are so valuable because it differentiates you from every other candidate that wanted to do it from since they were 2 years old. The fourth point, be honest. Avoid at all costs lying about doing an activity just to highlight how much you love the subject. Always be truthful in what you include and just generally be truthful to yourself. Your interest in the subject will naturally shine through. Even if you're short on things to talk about, it is better that you take time out, find a few more things, listen to a YouTube video, listen to a podcast, do something, rather than feel like you need to talk about things that you've not actually done. With number 5, read it out loud. This is so important. Read out loud your personal statement to yourself or to another person. This will allow you to actually hear what it is you're writing. You can now test whether you're being true to yourself, whether you sound like yourself, or whether you're making up sentences that doesn't reflect you and you don't really understand what it is you're saying. So speak out loud, make sure you understand, because if you, for example, get interviewed on it, you want to know the things that you're putting across. And if you're not being interviewed anyway, you want to know the arguments that you're standing behind. With number 6, make sure you get your spelling, your punctuation, and your grammar correct. And this sort of goes without saying. You want to make sure your sentences actually make sense and they reflect what you're trying to say, so the reader actually understands. As a side note, make sure your personal statement is applicable to all the courses you're applying for, because you will be making 5 applications. And also, there is no one right personal statement, and there might not be no magic kind of ingredient that will guarantee your place on a course. So take everything into consideration we've said and do what fits you. These questions that we just had in the previous slides are prompt questions. They're to help you think. You can use them and literally be like, to an academic material, did I think X, and go through it like that? Or it could just to get your thinking started. As long as you do and take the steps that are necessary for you, you'll be fine.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute my mic. So our top tip for your whole personal statement, it's literally own your personal statement. What does that actually mean? That just means when you're going to be writing your personal statement in every single thing that you do, make sure that you're confident behind it. Make sure that each and every single sentence that you write, you really understand why you're writing it, what the purpose is behind it, what you're trying to present, and what you're trying to give to the actual admissions tutor or to the university. Own it in that sense. Own it in the sense that you know what it's about, you know what the purpose behind it is. You own it in the sense that you really understand what the point is that you're making that particular sentence, or how you're in terms of how you're approaching it, and etc. And what that does is, if you ever do go to an interview, you know your personal statement inside out. You understand why you're writing what you're writing. You understand, when you're going to be talking to someone about your personal statement, you can really present it. Because if you yourself don't know what you're talking about, how are you going to convince an admissions tutor or someone else who's reading your personal statement to, understand what you're trying to say, or even be convinced that what you're trying to say is truly you? So the first step is own your personal statement, make it relevant to yourself, and make sure that you really believe in what you're saying. You might be making a point because you want to go to a top university. You might not actually be interested in something. But if you convince yourself, or you believe yourself in what you're writing, then you can at least show that enthusiasm and you can show that passion through your personal statement. And that's the most important point behind everything. Perfect. Farzana, could you go on to the next slide? And Rayhan will give us a quick intro into how you can get personal statement one-to-one help through our support system.
Right. So as a treat for everyone that stayed this long, we're doing a personal statement one-to-one check, and so you guys are the first to hear about this. It's on a the first ones that come, we'll check them. So the way it would work is, you, as the email mentioned, that admin@legacyproject.co.uk, send us your personal statement there, whatever it may be, any subject. Tell us what subject it is as well, specifically. What we'll do is we'll act as a digital intermediary. So let's say it was history. So we'd find someone, and we have a network of people in Russell Group Universities, Oxford, Cambridge, who have been through all that process. We'll send it to them. They'll check it, they'll give you feedback, and then we'll send it back to you guys. So just make sure you email us on there as soon as possible. We've got quite a few already. So just to make sure that you guys are up the queue, don't hesitate to do it, maybe even after this webinar or whatnot. If there are any other questions that you have with regards to personal statement, again, feel free to message there. One of us will probably reply on that, or any specific questions to each one of us. Just specifically mention our names, and we can reply to it on that. Yeah, any questions on that, just mention on the chat, but that's yeah, Farzana, if you want to go to the next slide.